Welcome. Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting is now commenced. It is October 7th at 4 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using a call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you use the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you are leaving the meeting so we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the state open meeting laws, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. With that, I'll begin the roll call. Michael Edmonds.
Present.
Olga Flores. Olga's not here yet. Sharia Jimenez. I'm guessing she will be joining here shortly. She's not here yet. I'm here, Jim Topol. Liz Wilson.
I'm here.
Hi, Liz. Jay Young.
Here.
Mindy Bernstein.
Here.
And Lori Mazurbo.
Here.
And our ex officio members, Maggie Amato-Tejas appears to be absent. Wendy Asher. Marianne Bierling.
Here.
Mark Clark.
Present.
Vicky Cusino. Vicky's absent. Marcos.
Here.
There you are. Betty Villegas. Okay, Betty, and Betty's absent. Corin Manning.
Present.
And Liz Morales.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Okay. Okay, so Olga was absent and Shay was absent. And that's it. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 8 of the voting members. Okay. I just realized I've got the wrong agenda up here. Hang on one second.
New member introduction, Jim?
We have a new member?
It's on the agenda, yeah.
So we do
okay. I'm
almost have.
sorry.
I'm happy to jump in.
Guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'm
okay.
happy.
We have. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm happy to jump in on this.
We have a new member.
There is almost a new member. I don't see her. She actually attended last month. I don't see her here now. She has been approved. So Liz Morales, she is the youth representative. And Liz has officially submitted her to be official. I think she still has to take her oath. And so maybe that is why she's not here today, but hopefully next month I think just understanding a little more about what she's been working on and who she is will be good when she starts attending and is official.
Okay. So her name is Evangelina Paz.
Yeah, and Liz Morales, do you want to, know more about her? Do you want to just give a summary on why you.
So I'm really happy to share with you. She was recommended by staff. She has been working on a couple of things with us around our youth homeless demonstration project. She currently works at Goodwill, who has one of the contracts to help the youth. She has a lived experience. She is really come quite a ways in her own career. And she is actively helping people right now with housing and other services. So I will be excited when she can join. She definitely was really excited to be asked if she was interested to serve on this commission, and won't be long before you get to meet her yourself and see what a great contributor, oh my gosh, I can't talk, contributor she will be to this group. End of the day, guys, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions on the new member introduction? Okay, we will go to the next agenda item, which is the approval, review and adoption of the September 2nd meeting minutes. Those meeting minutes have been posted on our website. So the floor is open for any comments or changes. And Shay is now with us. Mindy.
I motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Okay, motion's been made to approve the minutes. Was there a second?
I'll second.
Liz Wilson has seconded. Any comments before we put it to call? Mindy, do you have a comment or are you good? Okay. Okay, so I will go ahead and Michael Edmonds.
Aye. I vote aye.
Aye. Olga's absent. Shay, are you with us now? There's a text that said that she had joined, but I do not see her yet. Liz Wilson.
Aye.
Jay Young.
Aye.
Mindy Bernstein.
Aye.
And Lori Mazurbo.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. The meeting minutes are approved. I think I closed the agenda again. I'm sorry, guys. I'm struggling here. PDF. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, we will have the call to audience. This is a time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting law, Commission members cannot discuss the topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up on the public may be considered as an agenda item for the future. Okay, so Shay's back with us. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Okay, we'll move to the next agenda item, the subcommittee updates. First subcommittee is housing segregation. I don't have the chairs for the committees. Who's the chair for the housing segregation again?
I am, Jim. This is Jay.
That's Jay. That's right, Jay. I knew that. Jay, would you like to give an update?
Sure. So this was our first meeting, and a lot of what we did really was talk about the purpose of the subcommittee, the things we wanted to accomplish. One of the things that we realized is that we all really need to bolster our knowledge of housing segregation, kind of the history of that and how that relates to affordable housing. So that was a big part of what we talked about. We talked about recruiting members. Our committee is relatively small, though we did have a relatively good attendance from other folks that were not on the commission or on the subcommittee. We established our meeting time, and at this point, that's the fourth Thursday of the month at 1 p.m. for 90 minutes. We discussed potentially changing the title of the subcommittee. But I think at the end of the day, because it was our first meeting and also because I think we realized that we all have a lot to learn about the topic and kind of how it relates, we really kind of passed a lot of things on and decided that we would work through a number of these things over the coming months. So with that, I think that's pretty much what we covered, unless there's any other comments from folks that were there.
Jay, just one thing, after the meeting, Jay put together a list of resources, and that is now up on the website under the last Housing Segregation Subcommittee meeting. So if anyone else is also interested in learning more, and then before the next meeting, we'll send that out in preparation for the next meeting as well.
Very good. Any other comments or thoughts on the housing segregation subcommittee? Okay, permanent supportive housing. Lori, is that you, or did we change that?
I think
It's
that's
not me.
It's me. And I think, Liz, are you helping?
That was Liz.
Yeah, I think I have a co-chair. Someone remind me my co-chair. I think.
I don't think that we agreed on a co-chair.
Okay.
Liz.
Yeah, so for now, but we can always get someone to make sure we have good coverage. But I was really, we just had a great meeting. I just have to start off with that. We had a lot of input. So just to share, our agenda was around reviewing our purpose and of the subcommittee, coming to some agreement about what it is we're focusing on. We discussed some models and examples. And then we talked about the affordable housing plan, I'm sorry, I can't talk tonight, affordable housing plan that we're working on, and some things that we thought were important to bring up. So we're gonna continue meeting on the second Thursday. Our next meeting is October 14th from 4 to 5 p.m. And again, we had good input, and was really happy that we even had someone from the public that joined us. And so I think we're going to make a lot of progress. Very, very passionate and good conversation. So thank you to those of you that were on that subcommittee.
Mindy.
I think we also discussed asking any of the other commission members to join our subcommittee, because there's just the three of us. If one of us is not able to make it, we won't have a quorum.
Correct. And I'm glad you said that, Mindy. I actually think there's 2 commission members. If we
Great.
can get 3, that way we can ensure that we just need at least 2 people, not all 3 to be on the meeting. The way it is now, we have to have both our commission members to be able to have a meeting. So thank you for bringing that up, Mindy.
You're welcome. I'm begging.
Is there, okay, so we've got a new commission member, Evangelina. And then I thought we had one person who was not on a committee, and I'm trying to remember who that was. Is there anybody who's not assigned currently?
That was
Michael,
addressed during
which
the last meeting. everyone was assigned.
Everyone was assigned. Okay. All right.
One thing, there is still a vacant voting member seat, so hopefully mayor and council fill that seat soon. But without, given it and Evangelina's not here, you could put the hardcore press on her when she does come to join that subcommittee.
I have my hand. I just wanted to mention that Mercury is in retrograde these weeks, which means communication is more difficult and choppier. So if anybody's struggling with completing sentences or finding words, it's not your fault. It's Mercury in retrograde. Just saying. Okay, I'll be quiet now. Lower my hand.
Okay, Liz.
Yeah, so I just wanted to express my gratitude to Liz Morales for putting things together, because I don't think that I have the resources to contact a lot of the people. I do want to address that, like, the people who are not commission members that are on our subcommittee are CEOs. And a lot of them do have lived experience, but I do think that, like, members of the public who maybe are not directly involved in services but have vested interest in addressing homelessness, who have lived experience that's very recent, who are currently living in homelessness, like, I think that those are people that we need to have on the subcommittee to very rigorously address not only permanent and supportive housing, but transitional housing and other projects that we're looking at.
I agree 100%. Thank you, Liz.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments on the Permanent Supportive Housing Subcommittee? Mindy?
Yeah, I'm Liz, I'm recruiting heavily from the people that I know that would be good contributors. Actually, someone that I invited is not here right now, whose son is a perfect example of what the experience is regarding housing. So I don't know why I had to say that. It's important that we get stakeholders in on the subcommittee that lived experience. Thank you. Don't let me talk anymore today. Thanks. Put my hand down.
You are welcome to talk and contribute anytime you want to, Mindy. Okay, any other comments or thoughts? Okay, our third subcommittee is the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. Shay, do you want to give an update?
Yeah, is anyone else? I don't think Olga's on the line, is she?
Olga is not here yet. She's going to show up. She's going to be a little late.
Okay. So yeah, it went pretty good. We also were, just starting off, so I hope people are patient and bear with us. We didn't also have a ton of time to plan or run through it in advance, which, so I think we still have also some questions and some education to do around how the subcommittees work. We had some discussion around whether the ex officio folks or anyone basically who joins the subcommittee, if they can vote. And so I think we need to do a little more clarification around that. And my intention also is to pass the baton between myself and hopefully Olga. I'd love it if she runs the next meeting and we just take turns and we all, support each other in that way. But we went through the similar kind of just, back of house stuff, just establishing meeting times. We hope to do it, I think, the third Wednesday of every month, but for next month, we got into a big discussion. I mean, mostly we centered the conversation on Latex, but I think it's just because of the timeliness of the QAP being released and the desire to hopefully respond to that before, because that again has a deadline. So most of our time was spent around, discussing the QAP and LIHTC and I think what we didn't get to talk about also is, other forms of, we had discussion too around how we go about preserving existing affordable housing. And I think that needs more time and discussion and intention, as well as looking at other scales of affordable housing development, not just Latex, but other, so there's lots more to be discussed. We just didn't even get to scratch the surface. I feel and then the other, sorry, the other items would be, I'm trying to think what else we discussed. We, again, it was mostly Latex centered, but, and then just kind of establishing our overall meeting. Does anyone else want to add?
Sure, I can add a couple things. So Anne was nice enough to go through the draft of the affordable housing strategy plan that they're putting together. And that's actually going to be our next agenda item. One thing I'll just say about the qualified allocation plan, for those of you who are not familiar with that acronym, it is basically the plan that the state uses to determine which projects will receive an allocation of low-income housing tax credits. And that is probably the most widely used financing mechanism for developing new affordable housing projects. And so there's been a lot of turnover at ADOH. They have a new executive director, Cherie, who presented to us last month the City of Phoenix Housing Plan. She is now in charge of the LIHTC program for the state. And so they have completely revamped the qualified allocation plan, and they've got completely new scoring categories. So they're on a pretty tight timeline. They're trying to finish the QAP by the end of the month and get the governor to sign it. And there are roughly 40 points, which is a huge number of points that are available based on the city's, what we do as a city. So, as coming at this from the city of Tucson's perspective, we have to compete with Phoenix and Mesa and Chandler and Glendale and all the other places up in Maricopa County for tax credits. And so there is a sense of urgency that we want to try to get together and work with Liz and Ann on developing a strategy to help maximize points for the city of Tucson so that we can get our fair share. I don't think we've gotten our fair share of affordable housing projects in this region if you look back over the last 10, 15 years. So I think that was a lot of the discussion. I think we're going to get a couple other people at the next meeting who are active in our community and are trying to establish new affordable housing projects. I was a little disappointed a few people weren't there at the last meeting, but Jason Heisey was. He had some great input, so I'm excited about that subcommittee. So I don't know, Jay, if that helps or not, but Liz.
What are the criteria for those points? Just like a general idea or categories even?
So in general terms, there's a number of different categories. So some of it is developer experience. They want people who have done these projects before, so they get points. A lot of it is location based. So if you're close to services, schools, shopping, parks, so based on your distance between all the different amenities serving a project, transportation is a big one. That's points scoring criteria. Your target segment for affordability. So if you go after lower AMI, area median income groups, because the rents are a function of an individual's income, the lower the income range you're going after, the less you can charge for rent. which, creates other financial challenges for the project. So, if you go for a lower tier income, you get points. And then there's city involvement and leveraging of other funding sources. And that's where, some of the stuff from the city can come into play. And I'm sure there's some other things, but those are kind of the biggies. Any other questions or thoughts on the Affordable Housing Subcommittee?
Olga, did you want to add anything? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Not at this time. I just really feel that we're not tapping into affordability for purchase. And I know that's it needs to be addressed. And so I really don't have many others on the committee that are in the same boat as me. So I need to do some thinking and stuff. So at this time, I'd like to just remain quiet.
So Joe, I'm going to go ahead. Joe, you were at the subcommittee meeting yesterday, weren't you?
Yeah, correct. I just wanted to also note that although Shay mentioned that the Affordable Housing Subcommittee meetings will be the third Wednesday of every month, because there's a long time between now and the next meeting. That meeting that sets aside time to focus on the QAP is going to be November 3rd, I believe. So anybody who has interest in discussing that might want to attend the 11/3 meeting.
Thank you. Shay, you did a good job.
All right,
Okay. So if there's no other discussion on the subcommittees, we'll move to the next agenda item.
I'm sorry, I can't get my hand up. Can I ask?
Oh, okay, Mary Ann, go ahead.
Can you send that QAP information out to everybody that you just mentioned, please? For the meeting?
Marcos just put it in the chat, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. Is it in the chat right now?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the next agenda item is the housing affordable strategy. And Anne, are you going to be running with that, or Liz? I wasn't sure.
I'll run, and Liz and Allison, feel free to jump in. So one thing I'll say, I know it's a little bit of a mouthful, but I think Olga, what you just said is exactly why we're currently recommending the housing plan that Mayor and Council want us to come to, that you've been hearing about the last couple of months. We are proposing that we call it a housing affordability strategy for Tucsonans, and using those words because I think that when we talk about affordable housing, sometimes people aren't entirely sure what we're talking about, and alienates people, and some people think that that's not relevant to them. But what we know is that housing affordability is relevant to so many Tucsonans right now. And so just wanted to say that right now our working title is that it's a housing affordability strategy, because we know that there is a huge swath of our community that's struggling to afford to live, whether it's rent or home values. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that. I just put a link in the chat. So you've heard us talk about this the past 2 months, and wanted to give some updates. So we are still thinking that based on Mayor and Council asking us to return in 90 days, we're still shooting for the end of November to go to Mayor and Council with the draft plan. And we know that's quick, and I'll say really leaning on this commission, and in particular the subcommittees, in terms of providing input and really bringing your perspective in terms of that input. So I put the website in the chat. I'm going to share my screen. just to let you know that we now have a website, which is where we'll be hosting information on the plan as it continues to evolve. And this website is where we have information on public engagement opportunities that we're planning on hosting the end of the month. And so in particular, really hoping you all will help get the word out about these. So we're trying to tie together a lot of information from the outreach that's happened the past couple of years regarding this topic. And we also want to make sure we're hitting the key points that people feel like need to be included in this plan. So in terms of engagement, we're shooting to do a stakeholder session with developers, and that would include not only larger scale developers that are more tied into the Latex funding that Jim just talked about, but also hoping to hear from smaller scale developers or people who are more interested in the incremental development. So that will be on Tuesday, October 26th at 10 a.m. I have not yet started advertising this. This website just went live today in terms of the web URL that I shared. In the middle there, we're planning on doing a virtual meeting on Tuesday, October 26th, 4:30 to 6:30. And then the next day, hoping we will be hosting an in-person meeting here at Housing and Community Development, trying to thread the window between having people come who it's part of their work and also having it after work. So 4:30 to 6:30 is for those public engagement opportunities. And at that time, we do plan on sharing more in terms of where we're at with the plan and what we're proposing that it be included in the plan based on what we've heard the past couple of years, but really interested in feedback. And then I'm not going to go into the subcommittee yesterday heard the whole spiel. The Housing Affordability Subcommittee being the oh, and Evangelina's coming in. Maybe we can have her introduce herself after this item, Jim. So anyways, the Affordable Housing Subcommittee is where I'll be going into more detail, but over the next couple of months and really getting their input. But I did want to share kind of a high level summary with you all now. So I'm going to share the table of contents in terms of how the plan will be structured. So what we are proposing, and if you have looked at the Phoenix plan, you'll see how similar a lot of this is. So the first section is an introduction to affordable housing, in which we will tie together the work that's been done the past couple of years and how mayor and council have asked us to do this plan, and how it's important that this plan tie into the other mayor and council priorities. Section 2 is a housing needs assessment and gap analysis. And for that section, we did the housing market study with U of A and Pima County. And so really taking that work that's been done and summarizing it and synthesizing it. Section 3 is the people, communities, and homes investment plan, priorities and strategies around home. So that particular plan already identified 4 main priorities when it comes to housing, including goals within that and then strategies within that. We don't want to throw that out the window. And we do plan on really using that as a guide in terms of identifying the 10 goals and actions that we're working on now. Section 4 lays out the funding that we receive annually that can be dedicated to affordable housing development, and also lays out the ARPA funding that we have both on the HUD ARPA side and ARPA funding that's specific to housing, but then mayor and council this past week also approved a framework that includes funding for stable and affordable housing for the state and local pot of money. Section 5 is what I'm going to just talk about briefly today, which is where we're heading with goals and strategies based on what we heard, but all of that's open to feedback from you all. And then we may have a sixth section based more on implementation and monitoring. I'm not going to go through it all because I think you've heard from us quite a bit, but I did want to talk about, I just updated numbers based on new data sources. And so really want to stress that the data when it comes to housing is imperfect. And so please know that these are all estimates, but I thought that it's pretty eye-opening. And another thing I'll say, this is city specific. This is not Pima County in the region. But I think that in terms of, I had somebody ask me today, you know, what defines this being a housing crisis? And I think that this chart is a really good summary of why we are in the situation we're in. If you look in 2017, the estimated average rent across the city, and keep in mind, this is for studios up to 3-bedroom houses, 3-4-bedroom houses, but the median rent was $860. Whereas today, Apartment List is the data source, estimates it at over $1,100. And then in terms of the estimated home values, 5 years ago, it was $176,000, and today it's estimated at over $260,000. And so in thinking about summarizing why this plan is important and why it being a housing affordability plan focused on all Tucsonans, I think is part of the importance. The other, this is something we were updating based on, some of you have seen this, it's part of the housing market study. And we're still working on the way some of these things look, but when you start looking at examples of Tucsonans, a part-time retail worker, that's part-time, ends up making about $13,000. They can afford about $325 in rent, but when our average rent is over $1,100, you can really start to see why this is a challenge. And then this is the housing cost burden data too. Just wanted to share again, thinking about this as a housing affordability plan. We see that, yes, if you are lower income, you are much more likely to be cost burdened, not surprised, but even at higher incomes, we do have significant numbers that are housing cost burdened. Based on all of this, we are comfortable saying that we need housing affordability solutions for over 75,000 households in Tucson. Still, again, not going to go through it all. If you want to go through it more in depth, please know this is the Housing Affordability Subcommittee. That's where we're doing it. I did just want to go through quickly and let you know where we're heading in terms of 10 goals, and then I'll stop and get feedback. But first goal, we've talked a lot about the city needing to really look at a sustainable funding mechanism for our public housing. We have right now over 1,500 public housing units, and we know that the money we get to sustain those units isn't going to be enough it's not enough now, and it's not going to be enough over time. And so the city is really looking at transforming our portfolio and trying to make it continue affordability, but have it be a more sustainable funding source moving forward. And then we are responding to mayor and council's direction to create a development arm. And so in the plan, we'll talk about what that means. And we have some consultants helping us with that now. We want to focus on not just new construction, but preserving what we have. And so thinking through what are the programs we currently have, can we expand them? And then what are potential new programs that we can look at to really make sure that people are staying in their homes and continue to afford the homes they have. So one of the bullets on there I did want to mention is we are creating an accessory dwelling unit improvement pilot program. If the accessory dwelling unit code amendment passes, HCD is prepared to implement a pilot program where we help low-income homeowners that have accessory dwelling units or guest quarters, improve them to ensure that they're healthy and stable units that can support family members or be a source of income for them moving forward. Fourth goal is really making sure that we look at where we're prioritizing affordable housing and really looking at trying to prioritize locations of opportunity and really looking to do that to help with property acquisition opportunities, to help with that public housing transformation I mentioned, and then also as the city provides investments in affordable housing projects, this will be a tool that we can use to say the location of new affordable housing is really important to us, and here's the criteria that we're looking at. And so that's a draft, a work in progress. We do have a checklist we're working on, and so this is all parts of what will be included in the plan. This is working with planning and development services, looking for opportunities to look at zoning and other ways that the code could possibly be amended to support affordable housing development. Related to that is how can we reduce costs and through other innovations, potentially look at trying to get in new units or preserve what we have. One of the goals will be centered around the city-owned property. The city is a major landholder in the city, and how do we prioritize those locations to make sure that we already own the land, we know that that will be cheaper. How can we turn that into that land into affordable units? And then we do want to make sure that there is a goal targeting important key vulnerable populations. And we know that there are a lot of organizations that are working on this already. So how do we support them in their work and make sure that we're targeting units and services for vulnerable population groups? This is really a goal 9 is thinking about the Affordable Housing Subcommittee goal. And one of the goals that this commission has prioritized is thinking about long-term sustainable funding streams. Right now with the ARPA funding, we're excited about the funding that's coming in, but we know that that's not something we can count on forever. And we know that the need is so big in our community. How can we build more sustainable funding streams over time? And then lastly, we are looking at something around education and outreach efforts. And so please know a lot of this right now are just my thoughts and notes. They're going to be fleshed out a lot more. A lot of other people are helping work on this, but just wanted to keep you updated on where we're at and see if you have thoughts or comments or questions. And Liz and Allison, feel free to jump in if I missed anything.
And this is Jay. I have a question. You mentioned the city, looking to create development entities, and I was just wondering, how many community development corporations are there in Tucson that exist, 1, and then 2 that are active? And I'm just wondering if, by the city getting involved in that space, if it kind of takes the air out of the room for nonprofits and other developers potentially.
And I'm happy to jump in, but I'm going to see Liz if you want to jump in first on that.
So as far as number of CDCs, I don't know if there's a way to know how many there are. So I don't know if anyone else on this meeting has that information.
I mean, what would be your guess? I mean, just kind of being familiar with the city.
I don't know of any, but
maybe wrong. Is that, Jay, is your question how many individuals are doing development of affordable housing, or
how many
CDCs,
community development corporations,
or individuals? I mean, I was thinking more of community development corporations, but if there are other private entities. I mean, I guess my question, it's a leading question as to why is the city going to do that if there are potentially other entities that can do that are not.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, Jay. I think that is something that is not uncommon in communities. I will tell you that housing authorities for the longest time were not in this realm. I'm gonna say that there is, today and tomorrow has been the NARO conference. And one of the things that came out of some of the past HUD secretaries, assistant HUD secretaries, is that PHAs definitely need to be in the business of doing development, because we have certain resources and abilities that really need to help foster. There's not enough of us doing development of affordable housing. And if we're just leaving it up to developers, nonprofits to do it, I think we're missing a really important opportunity to do that. So that would be my short answer. There's probably a lot more reasons around that, but honestly, it's about just furthering it. And we are super supportive of all our developers in town, or even from out of town. We want more housing in Tucson. And so however we can get that done, I think is the overall goal.
And Liz, I'll piggyback, and this question came up yesterday in the subcommittee too, is as Liz said, it's not, my understanding based on the direction is that we would still support nonprofits and developers where we can, but this idea of housing is infrastructure, and government's role is to help provide infrastructure. And so considering affordable housing doesn't pay for itself, it requires subsidies. And so, for instance, with the city having land, the city supporting and trying to make that land available for affordable housing brings down the cost a ton and can make more units happen. So I wouldn't say it's in exclusion of supporting other projects, but in addition to, because of the huge need that's out there.
Okay, we got a couple people with questions or comments. Liz Wilson, you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. So I had some input about the graphic that you said is still being worked on with the income levels. So I saw that you put just the goal for people's percentage of rent or percentage of income to go towards rent. I think that it would be very effective to show what percentage of income actually goes towards the area median rent. So if it's in excess of 100, I think it should show that the percentage of income is in excess of 100% for someone to be able to afford area median rent or something to that effect, to just show how cost burdened people are for rent when working a minimum wage job. Also, I think it would be useful to show people who are retired and on disability as a group, because they do represent such a significant portion of our population, and their income is different. As for the portion on keeping rentals, I think it was like keeping rentals, it wasn't habitable, repaired or something like that. I've brought this up numerous times, but I think that there should be some sort of rental incentive or some sort of like specific language about like the safety of rentals. And so I think that that could be an opportunity to mention that, getting rentals up to a safety standard of some kind.
Thanks, Liz. Those are really helpful.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Shay, did you have a comment? Or are you good?
I put it in the chat. I was looking for this. I was actually researching this recently because I was like, a CDC is a specific type of nonprofit, and so I put the article in the chat that I had found helpful. And from what I remember, and I can't find the article now. I was trying to find it, but from what I remember, I don't think there are any in Tucson. It is kind of, again, a unique structure that I don't know that anyone has done specifically yet in Tucson, or if they have it, I don't know that they're active anymore.
Okay, Mary Ann, did you have a comment? Okay. Okay, any other comment? Mark?
Yeah, I think actually Chicanos por la Causa historically was one of the very early CDCs of the country. I don't know if they still are, and I don't know that they've actually functioned in that capacity down here, but And I think there may have been one or two others, but not many.
The only thing that I would add is that a lot of the projects that we might fund or the county might fund might be agencies that fall under the Community Housing Development Organization, which is a CHODO. So that's a little bit of a different distinction.
Right.
Again, community development corporations tend to be grassroots community organizations that they can work, whether it's on housing. A lot of times they work on things like economic development opportunities for small businesses and other things. We could, one of the things that mayor and council has asked is, should we be a CDC? Should we be a nonprofit? And what we're finding out and talking to great minds who do this work, attorneys, is that there's a lot of ways to do this development and figuring out which is the best way, one, to ensure protection get for the city. And a lot of, I will say and add what I didn't say before to Jay was that, we do plan to do a lot of partnerships with developers. The city is not in the realm of being able to be self-development, at least not in the foreseeable future. So we will look for experienced developers to help us do these efforts. And a lot of them are, nonprofits, and some are for-profits. I think in the end, the most important thing is that they're developing housing for those at the lower end of the income scale and are successful at doing that. So just a few additional comments around that.
Hey, is there anybody else have a comment? I don't want to jump in line here, but I guess I have a follow-up.
Go ahead, Jay.
Part of the reason I bring that up as well is just because, in my experience, having lived in Tucson, I feel like there's oftentimes a lack of capacity from more grassroots organizations on the ground. Obviously a CDC that would be developing housing would be, a little bit more sophisticated than some other groups. But, I just think that capacity building of organizations that we have in Tucson is critical. And I guess it gives me pause a little bit. I certainly understand that government and the city and the county and whoever, needs to get involved more just because of, the weight and the, kind of gravity that those entities have. But sometimes I feel like when government does get involved in those, it takes the air out of the room, and the capacity of organizations on the ground are not really able to grow in the way that they are in other communities. Because if you go to, other cities, there are community development corporations and nonprofits that are, much more engaged, I think, than what we have in Tucson, even though we do have lots of nonprofits. So, I do think that that's something to think about, because I think, if we think about housing in a vacuum without other services, without access to transportation, and not saying that we are, but oftentimes it's grassroots organizations that I think are helping to, put those other components in place that make housing, close to opportunity and all of the other things. So I guess that's partly why I bring it up. It's like, I certainly understand we need all hands on deck, but I think that's an issue in our community, honestly.
And Jay, I think that is a great way for us to maybe include that in, if that's the recommendation of this commission, is to look at developing capacity building for grassroots. The county, we help support, the county put on the small scale development kind of capacity building, but that's different than CDC. But those are the kind of efforts that, yes, I agree, we could be doing more of that and really trying to help develop that. And again, could we help support that? I think totally. And we may not have the TA in-house, but we could always bring in the TA, the technical assistants, to help do some of that training and capacity building. And I think even our home funds that we're getting through ARPA do provide a activity called capacity building, which kind of interested us on that.
Mark.
Well, certainly we've got some old line, very sophisticated nonprofit housing developers, Compass Affordable Housing, La Frontera, sort of COPE in the old days, now Foundation for Senior Living that's come down here. So we do have a lot of that. As Liz indicated there, those are different, somewhat different organizations than either old line 70s community development corporations or the 90s version community housing, whatever that CHODO acronym stands for, community housing development organizations, both of which require a fairly significant grassroots participation in their governance structure. So, but we've got some great developers, nonprofit developers down here, in addition to some really great commercial developers as well. So there is, I think we have probably a little more capacity than we may think we do. The challenge is, I think, as often the case, the issue of money. And how do we figure out how to finance this stuff? Thank you.
Liz?
Yeah, I just, I've been doing grassroots organizing for years. I think a lot of the reason why I'm on the commission is because of my grassroots organizing. And I think that in my experience with more recent organizing efforts, it is to fill gaps in services that don't exist. And it is not really to create a overall service for people to engage in. So yeah, oftentimes there might be a community pantry. That's because the community food bank is out of food. It's not because people are like looking forward to going to a mutual aid kitchen to pick up food. It's because the community food bank ran out, and this is maybe plan B, or it's a supplemental opportunity to have a fuller kitchen than they would have had previously. So like in my organizing efforts, both as just like someone who shows up that day and also who does long-term sustained organizing, people are resistant to something that's a big picture sort of thing because of the funding, but also because like we're showing up on our own time because our rent's expensive. We need to have jobs and we need to pay for that. So like, I think that it's more likely that we will develop a, CDC or anything like that with actual community members once our lives are more affordable. And once we actually address the things that we say that we're going to address. That's just my input.
So I'm going to go ahead and recognize myself right now. I have a little bit different perspective, Jay, than I think that maybe you do. I think it's great that the city is looking at trying to do some development on their own. I think they've got funding sources as a public entity that a lot of private entities do not have, such as RAD financing through HUD. And, I don't think that any developers or development entities are going to look at Tucson and say, no, the city is doing their own stuff here, so we're not going to get involved unless the city dedicates all of their financing towards its own development. I think as long as they're able to leverage what funding is available against, maybe their own projects and others, it could be a multi-pronged multi-pronged approach. Where maybe they do a couple of their own things with funding mechanisms that aren't available to private developers, and then they do a partnership with a private developer, and then they help support private entities doing their own development. And there's plenty of need for it, but I don't think we need to go all one way or all the other. I think it's great you guys are looking at that. And the other thing is, it's not been that long since the city did its own stuff. The last project I'm aware of was the Hope 6 project. I think that was done in 2007, 2008 over off of Silverbell. And, that was a good example of it was a scattered housing site in a housing subdivision that pathway I don't think ever built out. So, Mary Ann.
Liz, I have a question on the CDC. It seems to me like that it would be a really smart way of protecting the city when it's doing those huge, like RAD projects. and, rehabilitation of the public housing it owns. So is that also a part of the function of having that CDC?
I will say that it seems to me that creating a CDC from a city perspective is probably unnecessary, and I don't know if that's the right word. There is other ways. So for instance, to create a nonprofit, so what we're being told is there's a couple ways you can develop a nonprofit, one for the development piece of raising funds, financing, that type of thing. You could have another structure that's around asset management that's separate from the other nonprofit. So again, we're still exploring what do we need to have in place. And from the way most agencies do this, they actually, each project is its own corporation, its own limited liability corporation. So they call it instrumentalities, they call it a few different terms. So that's the way we'll probably move forward, even if we create a nonprofit, even if mayor and council said, no, we want it to be a CDC, we'll do that. But that will be separate from how we do the individual projects, because often those will include an equity investor, a co-developer, and the city. So again, those are things we're learning and figuring out how to approach each of those things, especially with our RAD projects. I could see those eventually being under a separate entity, separate from the city. So that, again, there's a lot of reasons to do that. But we know that mayor and council wants us to do more projects. And so that's what we're coming to you with, is how do we do that? How do we, what are some other ways we can do it? How can we expand it? What other funding sources can we use? That's what we come here to the commission to get the best guidance and recommendations.
Okay, this is good. This is a good discussion. Is there any other comments or thoughts before we move to the next agenda item?
Just again, I put twice in the chat the website in terms of when engagement activities are happening, and we are asking people to register so we can prepare and know how best to structure the meetings. So please help share with your networks, as we do want to get input into this plan. Thanks.
Can we get that these links and stuff into the meeting minutes? Would that be okay? So we get to keep a permanent record of them.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, anything else? Okay, our next agenda item is the low-income housing tax credit program and the QAP. And I actually forgot we had this as an agenda item when I was spouting off about it before. So am I running with this, or what's the, I don't remember.
And Jim, I think you already provided a little bit of context. I think in light of the discussion yesterday, just if people aren't aware why the QAP is so important. But yes, you're running with it.
I could spend the next hour talking about this, and I guess I don't want to do that, but maybe what I'll just do is kind of give a 10 to 15 minute kind of overview on the program, how it works, and how the Arizona Department of Housing determines what projects receive an award and which projects don't. Does that sound good to everyone? Because I just don't know how much experience everyone here has with that. So, okay, I'm going to take that as a yes. And if I am talking too much, please feel free to tell me to kind of wrap it up. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here. Okay. Everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay. So the Arizona Department of Housing is the organization that that basically manages the low-income housing tax credit program. This program is a federal tax credit. It was established in the 1986 tax reform that was done under the Reagan administration. And basically what it is, it's a public-private partnership for developing affordable housing. And the way it works, there's two separate types of tax credits. There's the 9% tax credit and there's a 4% tax credit. And I actually have like a really good slide. It would have been better to probably pull that up. But in short, the 9% tax credit is a 9% of the total project cost that is given to a developer over a 10-year period. So as a point of example, if there is a project that costs $10 million, it's a $9 million tax credit that's allocated $900,000 per year over 10 years. The developer takes those tax credits and they package them up and they sell them to a third-party equity investor. And it's somebody like a bank, an insurance company, somebody who knows that they're going to have a large tax liability over the next 10 years. And usually it's an entity that is subject to a Community Reinvestment Act, CRA. So it's a way that they can meet their CRA requirements. They get a little bit of a return, and they basically help fund the affordable housing. So they'll take that $9 million in tax credits and sell it to an equity investor at, say, 90 cents on the dollar. So in today's money. And so those $9 million, they'll receive 8.1 million from the equity investor. Then they got to go out and get gap financing from a bank for the gap, which is the $1.9 million. And they take that money and they're able to basically build affordable housing. And because they have such a low mortgage on it, they can charge lower rents. And the rents are determined based on income level. So it's typically 30% of an individual's income is the maximum that can be charged for rent and utilities. So there's an incentive to do sustainable housing to keep the utilities as low as possible, because that allows them to obtain more rent. The affordability period, the requirement is a minimum of 15 years. There are additional points given if they extend it to 30 years. So most projects these days have a 30-year affordability component. And, you know, from a developer's perspective, they don't really have a lot of cash flow on these projects. There tends to be a developer fee that is paid upfront when a project is complete. And then they spit out very little cash flow because the expenses basically are washed with the rents. And at the end of the 15-year period, they have a project that's free and clear. So they can, sometimes they will do a rehab on it or something like that and extend the affordability. So the 4% tax credit program works very similar to the 9%, except it's a 4% tax credit instead of a 9% tax credit. So going back to the example, the $10 million example, they get 4% over 10 years, so 40%, 4 million total. Those projects are not competitive. So the 9% projects are a competitive process where everybody submits their package to ADOH on April 1st or around April 1st. ADOH goes through, they score them, and they will award a certain amount depending on the allocation of tax credits. The 4% tax credits are more on a first come, first served basis. Those are more workforce housing. They have different levels of affordability. So those tend to target, the 60 and the 80% AMI versus the extremely low income people that are targeted by the 9%. In general, about 1 in 3 projects receives an award, and I call it high stakes poker because the applications cost about $100,000 to put together. You've got to have site control. So you've got to put down a deposit on the land. You've got to go through, do market studies, some basic architectural plans to show what you're doing. So there's some cost involved in putting together an application, and you know, roughly 1 in 3 receive an award. So it is you know, people who have experience tend to have a higher hit rate than those that are just trying to get into it for the first time. Any questions on the kind of that overview?
Is there any like mentorship or anything of like successful developers trying to get like new city local developers support with this or anything like that?
So there used to be a lot of consultants who would help people put together applications. The applications are fairly rigorous. You know, I think historically there's like 2 3-inch binders. Now everything's done electronically, but most of the consultants have been hired by different developers. So, you know, if it's something that you're interested in getting involved in, my suggestion is to do a partnership or a joint venture or something with somebody else. And so, you know, for-profits always need to have a nonprofit partner to work with. They get additional points by having a nonprofit partner. And I think by doing that, it's a way for nonprofits to provide services and get a little bit more experience. That's typically what I see for people trying to get into this, is they'll partner with somebody else who has more experience. So kind of going through the QAP, it's very long. I'm not going to go through a lot of the details. But again, they talk about the 9% tax credits, the 4% tax credits. There's fees. It's a $5,000 application fee. And then there's a lot of other fees that once a project is awarded, there's additional fees that ADOH gets paid, including annual reviews of the project to make sure that they're maintaining everything properly and that they are properly qualifying the people that live there. So one thing I think that is important to point out is there are set-asides. So the maximum award for a 9% tax credit is $2.5 million or $25 million over 10 years. So that is a large enough award that you can do roughly 100 to 120 apartments per developer. I think there's a $3.5 million cap. So a developer could put in on 2 projects if they want with a maximum ask of $3.5 million. There's also a state tax credit. So this is a new component that was just added this last year. A state tax credit can be stacked with the federal tax credit. They tend to have a lower purchase price because there's not as much demand and companies don't have as much need for a state tax credit. So in terms of set-asides, they're saying 3 projects will be set aside for doing rehabs. And these are like major rehabs for projects that have significant structural or mechanical problems. And, you know, a typical rehab on a 9% project will be roughly $80,000 an apartment. There are going to be 3 rural projects. So a rural project is anything outside of Maricopa County and Pima County. The rest of the projects most likely will get awarded in Pima County and Maricopa County. So, you know, when I talk about us competing against Maricopa County, it's really us against them. And I want to see Tucson get a larger share of the projects. There's a tribal set aside. So 2 projects are for the tribal communities. There is a nonprofit set aside, which means a minimum of 1 project gets awarded to a nonprofit, and there's a choice neighborhood set aside. It means 1 project gets awarded to choice neighborhoods development. And after the set asides, there's a general pool, and they basically allocate the rest of the credits to the pool based on how the projects score. So if you go down to, I'm going to go down to the scoring criteria, just so you guys can understand kind of what the state is looking for. Okay, selection criteria. Okay, so they award up to 25 points for principal experience. So if the developer has done 9 or more projects, they get 25 points. If they've done 1 or 2, they get 5 points. So it is very difficult to receive an award if you've not had experience, and that's why it's important to partner with somebody who has. And some of these national affordable housing firms that are starting to look in the region, you know, it'd be great if we could attract some of those guys down to Tucson. So supportive housing is worth up to 30 points. So HUD 811, this is a program, we don't see that a lot anymore, but the 811 program is for basically, they tend to be smaller projects for individuals with disabilities. So rental assistance, if there are project-based vouchers, that's 30% or more of the units, that's also worth 30 points. So I'm going to just keep going through this in the interest of time. So proximity to amenities, this is worth up to 35 points. And basically what they do is they're going to put these on a map for a lot of the different amenities that we're going to show below, and they just rank them. So grocery stores, a pharmacy is worth 5 points, medical facilities, a bus stop or transit stop, an employment center, like a university or Davis-Monthan would account for that. And then for one of these items, so school, a senior center, a library, a park. So, you know, they want to have locations that are not out in the middle of nowhere, that don't have access to the things that people need to use on a regular basis and that are close. So let's see here. It's been a little bit since I've gone through this. A community revitalization plan is worth up to 10 points. And that is something that as a city, I think we could potentially look at. Qualified census tracts are defined at the federal level. Novogradac has a map that shows where those are. Those are worth up to 5 points. And same thing with a DDA, a difficult development area. This is new, community Wi-Fi. I have not seen this before. They just added this scoring criteria. So it's worth up to 15. So below market loans and local support. So this is where another area where the city can get involved. So if there are nonprofits or other entities that donate to the cost of a project, it can get up to 15 points. This is also a new scoring criteria that just came out this last week, underserved areas. So basically they went through and looked at the zip codes that received awards over the last, I'm not sure what duration, five years maybe. And they're awarding up to 10 points if the project is not in one of these zip codes, which is a problem for us because 85701 is on the list, and the Thrive in 05, 85705 is on the list. So that's something that we need to advocate to get changed.
And would that happen at the meeting? I'm sorry, Jim. Would that happen at the meeting that's happening tomorrow?
Yeah, so there's a feedback meeting tomorrow, I think at 1 o'clock. I mean, you could provide feedback there. I'm going to be giving my feedback in writing. So I'll be sending Cherie a letter with the items. I think either way is fine. One of the things that's interesting about the feedback meeting is you kind of hear what everybody else is thinking and saying. So if it's part of a phased development, it's worth 10 points. And if there is a senior family and home ownership, so just about everybody falls into one of these categories. So if it targets senior population, family population, or if there's a way to do home ownership conversion, they'll receive those 20 points. If it's a smoke-free development, they'll get 2 points. Everybody does that. If it's an energy efficient project, they'll get 10 points. Everybody does that. That means they're going to meet one of the green energy programs, such as LEED, National Green Building Standard, Enterprise Green Communities, so on and so forth. Olga?
Yeah, I have a really quick question. What is the size of the development? This is not my area of expertise, so I just have a question about the size of these types of development for this funding. Is it more on the larger scale, or what are we talking about as far as units go?
So typical project is on the lowest side is probably 40 to 50 units. On the highest side's 100 to 120.
Okay, that's not too
So
large.
No, the 4% tax credits, those tend to be larger projects. So there are probably eight or 10 of those coming out of the ground right now in Phoenix. The smallest, because the legal fees and other things are so high, they need to get the economies of scale. So those projects tend to be 200 units on the small side. And I've seen, there's a couple that are like 600 or 700 units.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Coming out of the ground in Phoenix. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Just clarification. Thank you.
You're welcome. Did I back up here accidentally? Because we're seeing the same thing again here. So if there's a qualified contract waiver, I don't even know what that is, so I can't speak to it, but that's worth 8 points. And then there's a tiebreaker criteria, which is based on the number of units that are submitted. So if two projects have the exact same score, they'll look at which one is going to be providing more units, and they'll give that one the nod. This is kind of more regurgitation, I think, of the same thing. So I'm going to stop the share. Any 20 minutes, not too bad. Any comments or questions? Was that valuable for anyone? Mindy?
Just a curiosity, Jim, have you applied for any of these through this grant before? No. Okay.
No. I'm pretty involved. So I've been on a stakeholders committee with the Department of Housing for the last, 15 years. And we provide feedback to them on what we think they should be doing. And when we do that, I don't know the developers that I work with. I don't know exactly what they have planned. So I try to come at it from a kind of a pure perspective of not trying to game the program for a particular project. But, if I look over the last 15 years, we've done probably 30% of all the affordable housing projects in the state. Most of our work is up in Phoenix. It's actually more difficult to build in Tucson, but I'm passionate about Tucson, and so I want to see us do well. So, Marianne?
We've worked with tax credit projects in Phoenix and in Tucson, and have some projects here. And from a taxpayer perspective, and the development of this program has created more housing in the country than any other form of affordable housing development assistance. And it is a boon for communities because these projects bring in to the community, some jobs as well as the affordable housing, of course, but millions of dollars of investment in our community. And it's a worthwhile, it's difficult work, to say the least. And the great thing about the tax credit is that the housing itself is held to a much higher standard, from curb appeal, operations, asset management, security, all of that, than market rate housing is. And I don't think that our community understands that when we talk about this type of affordable housing. It adds to neighborhoods as well. And so that's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. There are studies out there that show that the tax revenues generated from a low-income housing tax credit project exceed the tax credits provided, because you give, it's not necessarily going to the same entities, but there's sales tax, there's property tax, there's employment tax, there's all sorts of different taxes that are generated through the development and the operations of these projects, where the net actually might be a positive for the government. So it is a good public-private partnership. There's a question in the chat: is do we have any Latex in Tucson? Yes. Typically, Tucson gets 1 to 2 awards a year. So there are 2 under construction right now. La Frontera is building one off of Oracle near Tucson House. And then Newport Partners has a project off of Prince and Stone. Those are the only 2 projects that I'm aware of are being built in Tucson right now. Shay?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you've ever seen, because haven't heard of them very often, but the home ownership is there not a strong market for that right now, I assume?
I've never seen that, actually.
Wow. And then my other, that was it really. I was just curious because I know we have some people interested in it.
Yeah, some of the tribes might do it, but they all get together. It's interesting because the tribes all get together and decide who's going to submit each year. So they basically decide themselves who's going to get what. And I think that they might be doing some of that, because usually the stuff that the tribes do is single family housing. Liz?
I was looking at the link that Ann put in the chat. I have kind of a 2-part question. First of all, you mentioned that the city can contribute funding in some capacity. Is the city contributing any of that funding in any way? And then my other question is any of the funding that the city has the potential to contribute, is that what's being used for the project on Broadway, or is that different funding?
What project on Broadway is that?
The Sunset Corn presented
Sunshine Mile.
a couple. Thank you, Sunshine Mile.
And do you want to respond to that question?
Sure. Well, stepping back, I know there were questions about where we have low-income housing tax credit projects in Tucson, and I put a link in the chat that is from the housing market study. As part of that, we did map affordable housing in Tucson in terms of our public housing stock, our Section 8 vouchers, and then also where there are low-income housing tax credit projects. And so there is a map that shows them all. Yes, Tucson contribute the funding we do get from the federal government. The past few years, we have supported low-income housing tax credit projects because, as Jim suggested, without that, the last couple of years, we probably wouldn't have gotten any low-income housing tax credit projects. It's contributing that money for gap financing is essential to getting those projects. So the city has been contributing. That said, the city has been pretty maxed out on the amount of money we've received and committed. So we're really looking at how to do that in a meaningful way moving forward, where we prioritize the projects that align with other goals. And so we're really looking at what's the best way to commit that funding in the future. And then your question about Sunshine Mile, in terms of if developers are have sites on Sunshine Mile that they'd be looking for the city to contribute. I think that that's something we'd have to evaluate when we get to that point. And then also that is something where the density bonus, if they are committing to affordable housing, they would be in a situation to be able to get in more, use that density bonus. So I'm not sure I answered that piece of that question, but that's where I think in the future it could be used on Broadway and they could get in more units with that just based on the density bonus.
And do you have to leave here soon?
I do, and I think a few of us at HCD are in that boat. We're going to a fundraiser, so apologies that a few of us will be dropping off soon.
Do you have any updates? I'm going to skip ahead real quick to 8, and we can come back to 7 if we need to. Is there any updates you want to provide?
I am wondering if Liz, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't prepare for that. And there probably is some updates. So just, yeah, I will say it, Corin, I think we have something coming up on October 19th, right, for mayor and council, just some things to look for in mayor and council meeting. Double check that with you.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is an update that we want to provide to the commission, which is that the accessory dwelling unit code amendment was recommended for approval by the planning commission just a few weeks ago, after holding 2 public hearings and hearing from many community members on this. They recommended the proposal kind of as is, and they also included a recommendation that mayor and council really put some funding behind making these ADUs affordable to Tucson residents through funding, but also technical assistance. Those are some things the Planning Commission highlighted that they really want to see the city continue to pursue to make this a truly affordable option. So that was a really important part of the Planning Commission recommendation that's going to mayor and council. The mayor and council will be holding a public hearing on October 19th. So we encourage everyone to please submit any comments you have to mayor and council, and I'll put in the chat how to do that.
Also, our last mayor and council meeting, which was on Tuesday, mayor and council gave approval to move forward with the year 1 ARPA, which is American Rescue Plan funding. HCD is going to be involved in rolling out some of the funding process, because some of the funding will be for the public, I should say the public, our community providers to apply for. And if you're interested to see what those are, I'd recommend you rewatch on YouTube the study session. I do believe, Anne, it was probably halfway through the meeting. I'm trying to remember approximately where it was in the meeting, but
it was the first item when mayor and council came out of executive session.
Okay, that's good.
So if you're watching the YouTube, it's the very first item that you'll be able to see the council members on the screen.
I always am concerned because sometimes the COVID issues come first, and I wasn't on the meeting, so that's good to know that you could see that without having to go through all the other agenda items. So if you have questions around that, feel free. We'll once we know more, we'll share that with you as far as what that timeline looks like. But there are categories for which agencies can apply for. So that was on Tuesday's meeting. It's again a study session, not the regular meeting. I think that's all the updates for now. I just want to share that we do have a Housing First Director hire. I really was waiting for it to be announced so I could share it through the announcement. But it is one of our city HCD staff members that got it. So it's very exciting. Has anyone seen it publicly announced yet? Okay, so I'm gonna share it as soon as I have it. I want to make sure it comes through probably the mayor's office. But that will be some good news we can share and what that might look like. We don't know quite what it looks like, but we know it's going to be a new position. doing some citywide efforts around homelessness. So sorry, I can't give you more. It's just a little teaser.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Ann. So if you guys need to drop off, go ahead. We'll finish up here. So I'm going to take us back to agenda item number 7. Are there any other final questions or comments about the LIHTC program and the QAP?
Yeah, Jim, this is Betty.
Hi, Betty.
Hi. I just wanted to go back to Shay's question about home ownership with the tax credits. And back, I don't know, Marcos probably knows more, remembers 15, 16, 17 years ago, we did do a lease purchase program with one of the developers. And I'm not sure how that turned out, but the intent was that whoever lived in these units for 15 years would then be able to purchase them at the original cost of the property from when they moved in. And it was through a nonprofit developer as well. It's been too long for me to remember which one it was, but yeah, so that was pretty innovative. I'm not sure, it was one of the first ones where that actually happened, and I'm not sure how successful or unsuccessful it was. Maybe Marcos can give us an update.
Hello, this is Marcos. And so, yeah, Betty, I don't have details on the project you're referring to. Unfortunately, it was, but we're going to be following up. We had monitored them last just before the 15-year period was going to be hitting. And they seem to have, on that project, a pretty good structure. The price was set for tenants as they moved in. They signed an option agreement that included a purchase price, and the price varied depending on how much time a tenant remains in the unit. So a tenant who lives in the unit for the full 15 years gets the benefit of the lowest purchase price offered, and then it's kind of like a sliding scale from there based on how long you lease the unit. So, and there was one in the city of Tucson as well. And I was going to mention it before when you were talking about the Community Development Corp. The city of Tucson actually started a development corporation. It wasn't called a development corporation. It was Metropolitan Housing Corporation. And they did a project on South Park. It involved some public housing units, and it involved a 15-year lease purchase as well. And those are converting to purchase this year, I believe. And I think Terry's been working with those tenants. And so, yeah, we do have a couple of projects here that have gone through that route. And the last thing I'll say is there's also 4% tax credits. They've been underutilized, but the advantage is they're not competitive like the 9% tax credits. And, you know, you don't have to, there's the 9% tax credits, you know, they're on an annual cycle. You can only apply for them once a year. 4% are open. You can apply anytime during the year. So, anyway, and we've got a couple of those projects going on. One in the county, the Center of Hope Apartments, which is converting part of a former hotel property to permanent supportive housing. So,
yeah, thanks. Another, Jim, thank you, Marcos. The other question that I have is, I know that the affordability period is, well, it's a 15-year tax credit project, right? So, but they're typically longer than 15 years, right? Because of the state the layering of state funds. And so if, could you just explain the affordability period and on the average, I mean, do you see any tax credit projects that go market rate after the 15 years typically?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because as we were going through the point scoring categories, I kind of realized that there's no point scoring category anymore for extending the affordability period. That's something that looks like they might have gotten rid of this year. And, you know, if you look over the last probably 8 or 9 years, there was 10 points, I think, if you extended it to 30 years. So most of the projects that have come out of the ground have a 30-year affordability period, but I don't see that in the current QAP.
Can I add
Mary Ann?
something? Yeah. So we have to remember that there's gap financing that has to be included with these projects. So if we're working with home funds or HUD funds, or other kinds of funding, whether or not the QAP gives points for extending the affordability, we still, because we are getting funds from federal programs as gap financing, are required to have 25, 30, or 40 years. So, you know, that's one thing. And then the other thing regarding the lease to purchase is, I think that with tax credits, it's very difficult to do. And that, but if there is a way to help people more during the course of their renting these, leasing these units, to be able to stay in them and actually achieve that purchase, I think the city in the housing arm or the development arm that it wants to create, that this would be a very, very good discussion for them to be able to include something like this within the framework of whatever they develop. Thank you.
Marcos? Marcos?
Yes, hello. I just wanted to add on the affordability. You touched on a Corings category that I think is related, and it was the waiver of the qualified contract. And so, unfortunately, there's a process that the qualified contract process that I believe allows a development to exit from the 30-year state affordability period by going through that process. So I think if you waive, it seems to me like that waiver would be giving you points because you're waiving your right to go through that process, thereby committing to the 30 years. I think that's what it might be, which hopefully it's like that, which would make sense.
Right. Okay. Shay?
Yeah, I had kind of a question and comment. I think for me, the question is, so I thought the awards for the 9%, that they funded almost 100% of hard costs, but that's incorrect, right? Yes. So about how much, what I'm curious to understand better, and I don't know if there's studies on this, but what percentage of the overall hard and soft, let's just say total project costs, hard and soft costs, what percentage of that is public subsidy between home, CDBG on average? Is there like an average kind of either dollar amount or percentage of the total project costs that are publicly funded? And the reason I'm asking is because I think my only criticism of the LIHTC program is that we have millions of dollars, right, in public subsidy that go into them, and then that they expire, right? And then, or that we have the potential to lose those units and all that public investment. It's not And again, it's just the way the program is. It's, you know, but those are some of the kind of the strategic things I think in this planning study moving forward, we could talk, I hope we can talk about is, can we start making plans for these units as they expire, and make sure that either the housing nonprofits have first right to them, or that, you know, there's partnerships created with land trusts, or, you know, there could be so many policy decisions that could be made around these units as they expire. And right now there is no real plan for that locally.
Can I jump in, Jim?
Sure.
Okay, so even though the ADOH process for the tax credit may be that we can get through the affordability period somehow, most nonprofits who are building affordable housing for the purpose of affordable housing have the first right of refusal. The other thing is, by the time that 15 or 16 years is up, depending on the tax credit start date, you can apply again for tax credit funding to repair and rehab the same complex to continue it as affordable housing. And if a nonprofit or a developer decides to sell it after so many years, the affordable period that home funds and city funds and county funds put on the project beyond the 30 years, that owner has to honor that.
Abide by that. Yeah.
That's why by agreeing to extend the 30 years that 10 points gave us, or extend the affordability period, was so crucial for those of us who aren't in it for the money, but are in it to create affordable housing in the community. So I am a proponent of keeping that affordability period, you know, up to 40 years, you know, for properties. And that's just, you know, that information. Thank you very much.
Marcos, did you have another comment?
No, that was it. I think my hand might have been up from before. Sorry.
Okay. So anything else before we go to next steps? Agenda item number 9. Okay. So our next meeting, it says here, our next meeting is going to be October 7th. That's obviously today. I think our next meeting is actually November 4th. And subcommittees should all meet before then. Everybody good with that meeting date?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could add an agenda item sometime soon, since it's looking like the ADU is going to pass. Can we add as an agenda item like policy, education, or discussion of some kind for Airbnb regulation, possibly from one of the cities that has successfully regulated Airbnbs? I have a list in front of me of those US cities.
Okay. Got that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we had talked a couple months ago about maybe doing a site visit of a new affordable housing project. Is that something that we would like to do as a team? We would like, or we want to continue to do the meetings virtually? How do you guys feel about that?
Let's do the site visit. Is there anyone opposed to the site visit?
I think last time the question on the table was it going to be a formal meeting, and how were we going to meet open meeting expectations? And like, how were we going to give that opportunity to the public if they wanted to attend? So how we figured that out?
I haven't. Mindy?
My suggestion would be that it would be the site visit, which I drive by all the time, and it's a beautiful building that you're doing, Jim. Is that it be voluntary, that people who want to go see it, go see it. We could organize a time. I think missing a month of catching up on what we're doing in our subcommittees and the open law requirements that you just brought up, it just makes it easier if we, that's just my suggestion. I would prefer it be voluntary. that we
Okay.
Inside the meeting.
Yeah, okay, well, let's
I
do
second
that.
that.
Let's have the meeting. Yeah, let's do the meeting same way next month. I will get a site visit organized and send it out to all the commission members sometime over the next 6 weeks. So I don't know exactly when that's going to be right now, but I'll put out a poll or something and we'll get that scheduled. Okay, before we adjourn, I would like to give the floor to Evangelina, our new commission member, and just give her a chance to introduce herself. Evangelina, are you with us?
Yes. Hi, my name is Evangelina. I work at Goodwill Metro. I'm a youth care outreach specialist. And to be honest, Austin nominated me for this. And I'm really excited because I see all your guys' big plans you guys been working on for a really long time. And I'm excited to see the future of that.
Welcome.
Great, thank you, Evangelina. We're glad. Yeah, we're glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we adjourn, Marianne, did you have one last thing?
Yes, we would love to also tour downtown motor apartments because it's a, downtown project and it's a smaller tax credit project that's built on a podium, and it was a rehab of some historic pieces of property. So we're open to also do that.
Okay, were you involved in that project with La Frontera?
The downtown motor apartments is purely Compass Affordable Housing.
Oh, that was Compass, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll follow up with you and maybe we can do both.
Okay,
same
sounds
time.
good. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right, good. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. It is 5:53 and the meeting is adjourned.